the meeting open. Calling for apology, having an apology from Councillor Brewer. We might make a note that Councillor Certi is present by Zoom video conferencing. And that being no further apologies or need to note anyone down. Someone move that. Councillor Taylor, Councillor Irving. With that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the last ordinary council meeting held on Thursday the 25th of June. Someone happy to move the confirmation of those minutes? Councillor Bruce, second. Councillor Derrick. Councillor Bruce?
No, just happy to move it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions before we move those? Put those. That being the case, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on, item 4, declared disclosure of interest. Any councillor have any interest that they need to disclose before we move on in the meeting? Disclosures. We don't need to actually move that, do we? Or not? No. Just note that no disclosures. Item 5, the mirror minutes as mentioned, 3 areas that I wish to make note in the public sense regarding our council. The first one is that we, as a council, put to the Local Government New South Wales Conference later this year a motion relating to the differing way in which government has responded to the COVID crisis, the drought support, and particularly in regards to household incomes and income support. So we'll frame it an appropriate motion, bring it back to council, and then submit it to the Local Government New South Wales Conference for consideration. The second one regards the Roads Maintenance Council contract with Transport for New South Wales, which councillors are very much aware that we've declined to sign. I just wish to make a note that we have been in contact, or Kilgandra Council have been in contact with us, and that they will be responsible for the entirety of the Oxley Highway from Kilgandra to Warren. That doesn't preclude us from helping them out on a contract basis, which in some ways will suit us, but just noting that we will see some Kilgandra Shire Council vehicles on that highway, and we'll get some questions about why that's occurring. But I think very much better to, as we discussed, on the side of caution, and I think there'll be an opportunity to participate in some work there nonetheless. Third, Mayor Bennett regards the change in traffic conditions that will occur at the intersection of the Industrial Access Road and the Corinda Road. And present there's giveaway signs on the Industrial Access Road as it crosses the Corinda Road. That will be reversed so that the giveaway signs are that those on the Corinda Road give way to those on the Industrial Access Road. And this just forms part of a sensible traffic management plan that's a longer term with an offset T-junction being proposed, and forms part of the roads of strategic importance, inland flat route, sensible way of going forward and keeping particularly heavy vehicles off our main street, encouraging them, because they don't have to stop, to just have to use that access road and have much better traffic flow, truck flow, heavy vehicle flow. But what it does mean is we're going to have a significant education process for locals, and very significant signage, potentially some of the rumble ads that we have on the entrance to the town from the Ellinger Road, the Wombiona Road. We're just flagging that, and just we need to certainly be publicising that very, very heavily. So as we start to move that one forward, so that we give way signs, change of orientation for that. Those are the minutes I wish to raise. Do I have to move them? Notation, I'm moving those 3. And someone to second that? Councillor Derrick. Just before we put those 3. Being the case, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 6, the reports of the committees. The first one of those being the Warren Committee, the Warren Public Arts Committee on the 7th of July. So to move those minutes. Councillor Williamson is chair, second, and Councillor Irving. Councillor Williamson, anything to add to that before we put that?
I'd just like to bring a couple of things up. Like, it's a very passionate committee. They're very keen to go forward, which is good to be part of. Very keen to do Stratford Street Tower, and very keen to do a fair bit of communication and a fair bit of transparency on why we picked the Stratford Street Tower. So we're going to put an article in the paper for why and go through it properly. That was one of Councillor Irving's recommendations, that we do that sort of stuff. So we're going to redo that properly. So we'll be having in with our local paper a photo op down there and explain how we come up with that decision. We've also got an action checklist, which is on there, which is pretty important. So we've got to finish our charter off properly. We've got to finish our policy off. One of the things in the policy is we'll probably take the New South Wales Arts Policy, I think that's the proper name for it, which will, because when you get art and you have art, how long does it stay there? Who owns the art? There's all these issues to go through, which I never knew till today. So we've got to get that right, because if someone donates a bit of art, they expect it there forever and they expect to walk past and it stays there. But with this New South Wales Arts Policy, there's a lot of rules in there and regulations, so we can go forward that way. So we'll make sure that's all done properly. We're going to do a master plan and also seek funding. So look, it's a pre-passion Tuesday as well. It goes through. We've got a bit of money to start off with. We'll have to have more money to do Stratford Street, so we're going to seek funding for that. So it's a good committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Speakers against? Question, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I noticed there was a few apologies, but is it, I mean, Alicia and Raylene work, obviously, in your meeting. Is there an idea of maybe, is that why they couldn't make it, because they had work commitments, you had them out early?
Correct, Councillor Walker.
So is it possible to, so they can?
It was just a one-off.
Oh, okay.
That's one-off things, and we can't keep changing meetings for everyone, because otherwise you might get everyone there. Alicia was upset she couldn't be there, but it was a late work thing she had to go to. She had to go to a training ceremony in Dubbo, and Raylene Darcy as well had something, but she just.
Oh, so
just one of those things.
Time they'll be.
That'll be. Yeah, no,
just,
it was just one-off sort of situation. So.
Okay.
That's
fine. Thank you. Anything further before we put that? But in that case, the Warren Public Arts Committee minutes of their meeting. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the Mannix meeting held on 14th of July. Someone happy the recommendation there? Recommendation being that the minutes be received today. Councillor Irving moved, Councillor second and Councillor Williamson. Councillor Irving.
Yeah, I always enjoy reading the Mannix minutes, actually. There's a lot of information in there, so thank you. Just thought it was really good for our ranger to be able to now send emails to people who own dogs or cats that need the seizure of them, for whatever reason. So it's going to make our ranger's job easier, I think. If I thought that was, it's just a comment. Hopefully he's able to use that, to make his job easier. Yeah, and
any further comments, questions before we put the?
I was interested in what Colleen just said, that from the 1st of July, non-D6 cats have to pay an annual charge of $80. Restricted dog breeds and dangerous dogs have to pay $195. So that'll be interesting to see. Residents commenting on the name of Dubbo Street going from, say, I suppose, IGA right through, how the difference in the seal, and then there's that margin onto the curb. A little bit nonplussed about how it's all looking.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are aware of it, and we are putting into place some kind of remedy. In fact, we acknowledge we leave substantial amounts of loose stone, and which we'll have to pick up. So it's not, we're just trying to avoid it, which people can do. Try and make it as easy as possible, tailing as less little work as possible, catch-up work. Because we do sweep the streets with a small sweeper, in behind the curbs and that twice a week. That machine, has excessive loads of material when the loose stones get there. And that's primarily the reason that those whole little sections are eventuating, because of the sweeper picking up the surface. And so it's sort of, it's a bit of a tricky area, but we do have in our 10-year plan, which we've got about 8 years to go, the pot mixing or asphalt on the whole main street. But that's a long way from being required at this point in time. So.
Yeah, Councillor Walker, you might recall we had a look at about just repairing that in a provisional way after the new curb and guttering went in, etc., etc. So it is unfortunately a bit of a stopgap measure until, as the manufacturing service alluded, to do it properly. And unfortunately, we're just going to potentially have to live with that for
I suppose maybe it's a thing that it could be put out there in some manner or form so that residents know what's happening.
Remind me, please, Councillor Walker. That's another thing. No, that's good. That's good. It's fine.
Thank you.
I think that answers that question. The other one I think we should note is just for the purposes of actually being aware of it, the request about swimming pool being internally refurbished, and that's going to begin on Monday. So I think if we can just confirm that that's going to happen, then we are avoiding a potential problem, which is I'm very pleased about. Okay, any further discussion on the minutes of the Mannix meeting before we put that? In that case, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to minutes of the committee meeting held on 14th July, Tuesday. So I'm happy to move those minutes. Councillor Certainty, you have to do it.
Sorry, I don't know whether you can see me waving or not.
Councillor Certainty, thank you. Second. Councillor Breach. Councillor Certainty.
Yeah, no, I didn't quite hear, but it is the UMR waste one we're talking about, isn't it?
Sorry, Councillor Certainty, we've got you out of kilter, out of the roads committee.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fine. I've got no particular queries. Just there's just one comment, if I can. You know the way we were talking a couple of meetings back about where they were going to put together the map that shows you the various sections and what they mean. Because when they come up in the reports, I struggle to find out what part of the road you're talking about when I haven't got something in front of me to sort of verify what I'm looking at. So is that still on the planning boards?
Yeah, there was a map in the roads asset management workshop on part of that whole sheet, but I think, yeah, happy to see that you get a copy of that again.
Yeah, if you could.
You need a fair size sheet to be able to actually see them reasonably clearly. It's not something that you want to email and try and print because it's a bit too detailed. But that, yes, just certainly that is very helpful. Understand that for sure. Thank you. Any further comments, questions before?
I was going to bring it up. I noticed Andrew, he's not here. He was asking about all the signage for the UMR bridge. I know that's RMS. It's saying if it could be removed and no one's taking any notice of speed limits anyway, so, that's probably talk to.
Mr Mayor, the response there is that it is, as stated, the Transport for New South Wales responsibility. But the immediate approaches to the bridge are very, or will be very susceptible to a collapse at any point in time because they are unstable and substantial. Repairs to be completed under the immediate abutment. So those signs are there for safety purposes. But if they do collapse, that people will have some ability to slow down or stop. So that's.
Have you had any update been on when they might start to?
The work will be completed by the Transport's bridge section, which are very, very unpredictable. I've often waited this term, or I'm not expecting to see them anywhere before October.
Okay.
And that's just been from an indication, loose indication from the Transport. So,
Thank you.
Councillor Walker, further to that, I do intend to write something in the middle column just pointing out that that is in fact the responsibility of Transport for New South Wales. It's not a council responsibility because I understand people thinking what a council doing about this and it's something that's beyond our control.
That's a good idea. Okay.
I think that was I'd have to have just a comment on, that was a very productive meeting, the Roads Committee meeting. I think it set some good ground rules and some good understanding of what's actually happening on the roads front. I think the information's there in terms of where funding is coming from, which I think is always important. So we'll have the 400 matched by another 400 for the Collar Road, and then the funding that we were fully aware of regarding the Ellengerard Road, Old Warren Road, what was the third? Bogan Road, Nevertide Bogan Road. So the grant funding was 1.3 something, and will contribute 450 out of the local roads and infrastructure grant that we received of 650 odd. That'll be our component, our 25%. So a lot of local road work being done, but essentially not out of ratepayers' funds. So I think that's a big bonus, and they're all important roads to start to bring up to speed.
So the road, the Collo Training Road, that's enough money to do the whole thing?
No, it's
not.
There's about 6 kilometres. I think Riley Manager Engineer might just correct me, but there's about 6 kilometres altogether.
Yeah, we're actually, there's money from that item the Mayor just spoke about to complete 3 kilometres. And we have a gravel resheeting programs, an allocation to gravel resheet another 2 kilometres. The material for that will come from Bogan Shire. We've made an agreement with Bogan Shire to use some of their material at a cost, of course. And then that'll leave considerable length of Collo Road, Old Warren Road, sorry, but that's still completed.
Sorry, Councillor Walker, I think it's talking about the Collo Road.
Collo Training Road. Collo Training Road, the $800,000 we've got to spend this year we'll battle to do the 2 kilometres of that segment, or leave the remaining 4 kilometres, which will be far more expensive. And we'll chase him through fixing country roads and grant application, additional funds to complete that. And as I've said in the report, we've got to be conscious to let the people know that what we've got is not going to repair the whole 6 kilometre length. That length's increasing. I expected it yesterday, and it's getting closer to Collo, so it's very much a concern coming up. So,
yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Any further comments on the meeting of the roads committee before we put that? If they can, then Councillor, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the Economic Development Committee held on Wednesday, 15th of July. Someone happy to move those minutes? Councillor Derrick. Second. Councillor Walker. Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I have anything to add to what's in the minutes and recommendations. understand there may be some questions and recommendations.
Councillor Reddy.
I noticed that, and I think it's a good idea, to send a letter to the Minister for Energy and Environment. I just wondered if maybe our General Manager had already alluded to this, but in the MERC newsletter in May, it had said that the chair of MERC and the CEO, so Councillor Peter Shinton and Greg, had met with the minister via Zoom, had met with the minister and had actually discussed including Warren Shire in the renewable energy group Central West, and that the minister had responded with, yes, that's a very worthwhile idea, and inclusive of, I think, other shires around us. So that has been discussed on our behalf with the minister. So I just wondered if that some reference to that meeting might be included in that letter. It might let's add some weight to the letter if it hasn't already been penned.
Also, something up. It's got the recommendation to council. I'm just wondering if it says Shire Council area be added into the new energy site. So I was wondering if it could be more specific. That Shire Council area be added to the recently announced renewable energy zone Central West and Lobby. Specific. Shouldn't there?
Yep, sure. Noted. Thank you, Councillor. The specific reasoning there was that for a solar farm to plug into the network, you actually have to have a significant amount of infrastructure to allow that to occur. And so at the moment that's available, it's never time, but beyond that, you don't have the substation that's required, etc., to do it anywhere else. So that was the thinking behind that proposal. Good reason.
Find that puppy. Where's Puppy? We'll find Puppy.
Also wondering, it talks about the signs. We had a chat about the signs, you know, as you're coming into Nevertire and trying to get people to come to Warren. I noticed in the Mannix that that's been held because there's not an EDO to follow up with it, so it's a bit contrary to what we're saying and what's in the Mannix. I'm just wondering if there is someone who's looking into them.
Mr. Mayor, the answer is the General Manager. General Managers are responsible for all your decisions and he'll make someone help him to achieve them.
You're wrong. Thank you for that. Clear that up. Any further discussion, comments on the minutes of the Economic Development Committee meeting? That being the case, we'll put that. All those in favour? Yes. Carried. Moving on to the meeting of the UMR Waste Bay Sunset Committee held this Tuesday recently. You'll see as we spoke about earlier, the actual minutes and then some information regarding item 5.1 that was discussed in that meeting, just in the background to other councillors. Councillor, perhaps to move the minutes of that meeting. Councillor Sturdy, I'm looking at you. Thank you, Councillor Sturdy. Seconded, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Sturdy, we're on the UMR Waste Depot minutes, just in case that you are struggling to hear us.
Yeah, you could. It's just every so often you sort of fade in and out, but most of the time I can catch up with you. Yeah, with regards to the waste depot, the recommendation in there states that we want you to agree in principle, mainly because of the fact that there's just a few little issues that we want to clarify and make sure that they're properly done before we move forward. So seeing it's a little bit more of a technical issue, if I could ask the manager of engineering if he wouldn't mind just elaborating on it, that would be, if he's willing to, that would be lovely.
I think, Councillor, you're asking just specifically about the waste transfer station and
Yeah.
just the actual siting of that and the
Yeah.
geotechnical work that needs to be done to make sure it's sited correctly.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
Through Mr. Mayor, the geotech results haven't yet been received, so I cannot expect the design company to give me any answer in response. I have spoken to them about moving it a little bit further away from the pond area, and that's possible. We've just got to wait for the geotech results. Firstly, the 3 holes that went down cost about $10,000, or a little bit over. So if I'm can avoid putting any more down, it's a matter of saving a few dollars. So we'll just wait and see what the result is on the stability of the existing walls. So it'll be a couple of days. I'm expecting to get the results back before Monday. They may come back on Friday, but I think Mondays are more sort of the time to do the tests that have to be completed with the soil that was excavated.
Thank you. So, Councillor, what we're trying, the UMR Waste Depot is trying to achieve is a transfer station just on the town side of the office that's sited at present at the entrance. So if you come in just past the demountable office, on the right-hand side is the proposed transfer station. The difficulties are there is quite a low area that may need to be filled in. Experience says that those areas continue to subside year after year after year if you're trying to fill them in. So the proposal is we perhaps move the transfer station a little bit further towards the town, and by that only metres, maybe to get a more stable area. And so that's what the Management Engineering Services is seeking some just geotechnical advice to see that that's possible and that might be a reasonable way to go forward. And then what will happen, water will drain from the transfer station back in across the road or underneath the road into the existing dam that's there. And as you're well aware, any wastewater can't leave the site in the UMR Waste Depot, so we've got to deal with it on site. This is the thing, just to get it all right and all draining the correct way. Transfer station that works well. We saw some photos of Gill's transfer station again, and yeah, a little bit of time and planning will save some potential headaches along the way because it's a fairly costly exercise.
And when the geotech reports come in, I mean, you've got a limited time to get this all up and running from what you said, so we would need another meeting. Through
you, Mr. Mayor, we discussed yesterday, we may have to ask for an extension of time on the monies, which will allow us a little bit of leeway, which we won't hesitate to do. But there will be another meeting as soon as I can get something a little bit concrete on the structure and the location of the structure. I will seek approval to organise another sunset committee meeting. You'll be kept up to date with the progress on the project.
Thank you, Engineering Services. Any further discussion before we put the minutes of the meeting of the UMR Waste Depot Sunset Committee? All those in favour? Against? Carried. During the reports of delegates, we have none opposed. Policy, we have one item there is a review of the investment policy. Someone to move that, please. Councillor Erskine. Second, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Erskine.
I actually think, is it the Manager of Finance Administration? Thank you. And yeah, I'd just like to remove the recommendation actually. Thank you.
I think this is basic. It's a review of our already existing policy, and I think we have to be prudent and sensible in the way that our investments are made. And I'm just wondering whether the Finance Administration just has a comment at all, that anything he needs to add to what's in front of us?
No, it's just in our policy, it's supposed to be reviewed annually. The auditors picked up that we didn't review it the last 12 months, so it's basically ticking the box for the auditors as well. And a body policy said it has to be reviewed. There has been no changes to it. Ministerial order from the Office of Local Government hasn't changed the last 15 years. So basically, and the way with COVID and interest rates are going, won't lock on the money in the short term either, in case they do fluctuate at all.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions before we look at the investment policy? No, that being the case, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the reports of the General Manager. The first of those being the outstanding reports checklist. Someone happy to move that? There are a couple of asterisk items. One of them. Yeah, a couple. Someone happy to move those? Councillor Sturdy, Councillor Walker. Councillor Sturdy.
Yeah, no, I think there's nothing in there that causes me any grief. So yeah, I'm happy to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sturdy. Any further comments, questions? Put that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 2, the report of the committee and delegates meetings. I think in recognition of Warren Council that we just see Warren Council being a healthy town and Midwest, the Healthy Lifestyle Council will be standing by version of this item. Business paper. Now, at present, I've neglected to get ask for a mover and a seconder for that item 2 of the General Manager's report. Someone
I'm happy to move it for you.
Thank you, Councillor Surdy and Councillor Derrick. Councillor Surdy.
Sorry, you got a vision of my body, but that's unfortunate.
No, we just wanted to confirm your standing.
Oh, I'm standing.
Like you're well dressed.
I can just add one in there for the Outback Arts Board meeting. It's now going to be on the 31st of August, I believe, still at Canamble, but I'm just not sure if it's face-to-face or electronic. Just depends again with COVID. Thank you.
Any Councillor Irving?
Well, we received an email yesterday about the Central West Public Libraries Association meeting on the 2nd of September.
Just noted. Yep. Thank you.
I just asked, was there something the joint organisation meeting that on the 13th?
I was unable to attend that. The General Manager can give you an update. He listened via Zoom. I think it was a very bit of a convoluted type meeting, but I'll ask the General Manager for a comment on that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, there wasn't a lot occurred in the meeting. It was really a meeting for meeting's sake. The new CEO of the JO was Brad Cam at Midwestern Council. It's always smudgy to me. Midwestern Council took over, and there was just some functions that were carried there. There were some items raised, and the main item that this council considered was again the resolution we passed to write to the ministers about the difference between COVID-19 and drought funding payments. The GAO has taken that on and asked the other councils to put it individually to their council. So the GAO will be writing to the ministers and request a change. Hence the reason we got a response from Gil last night to say that their council had passed that resolution unanimously so that they could write to ministers as well. Other than that, it was really about the budget, and there isn't substantial funding to keep the organisation going. With a paid CEO, and it will just function really this stage. There was an issue raised about a new report on weirs along the river, and I've got to reread the report, but my first reading of it was all about putting in fish ladders, and they talked about can't say the word, Melbourne weir. Marebone weir and Gingin are going to get fish ladders, and that'll allow fish passage from the bottom end through to up to the dam. The only bit they forgot, and the bit I need to reread, is our weir, the Lower Warren weir, was not mentioned in the report, so maybe the fish have learned to fly to get over it. So we'll reread that. If there's a correction to be made, we'll ask the government to make those corrections, and maybe they know something we don't.
Marebone weir's already got a fish ladder.
Yeah.
Maybe got the wrong.
Maybe they got the wrong weir.
Yeah, maybe they don't. We don't know.
Anything further on item 2 of the General Manager's report?
I don't want to prolong this, but I was just wondering about the Murray-Darling meeting that was on the 21st.
Oh, that was another Zoom one, which we haven't attended at times.
Okay.
I didn't attend.
Okay, thank you.
Milton, that library meeting is originally the zone library meeting. It's meant to be at Lightning Ridge, but whether or not we go over to Lightning Ridge because of COVID, we're not sure. So we're just waiting on the confirmation of whether it's face-to-face or over at the Ridge.
Okay, thank you. Yes, like all meetings,
Yeah.
Who knows, day-to-day proposition. Thank you, Councillor. Any further on the item 2 of the General Manager's report regarding committee delegates meetings? That being the case, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Invite you to be seated again. Moving on to item 3 of the General Manager's report, the General Manager's end of contract. As discussed pre-meeting, this is the recommendation is there, and we've had a little bit of discussion. Is someone happy to move the recommendation? And at that time, we need to consider perhaps two individuals beyond there and the Deputy Mayor being part of the committee to run a selection process regarding the appointment of a new General Manager. So, Councillor Taylor.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Mayor, and I'll put my hand up for anything on that particular committee. If no one else wants to.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Sorry, remind me, your
C ward.
Yeah, so we need someone from A ward. Look at Councillor Derek. Look at
I would be happy to.
A.
Unless
Unless there's someone.
I'd like to.
That's like a good idea.
Because there's the three girls, okay, and Councillor Derek's happy to put a hand up. Thank you, because I know the amount of work that's going into roads and UMR West Depot, share the load around a little bit is a good thing. So sorry, you had Councillor Taylor to move that motion. Need a seconder? Second, Councillor Drews. Councillor Taylor, you happy to just amend the recommendation to include yourself as a representative of C Ward and Councillor Derrida as a representative of A Ward in that committee?
Yes.
Yep. So I think that outlines the process that we'll go through to a certain extent. Bearing in mind that this has been, or last time was a relatively costly process, but at the end of the day, we want the candidate that will add significant value to our council. So unfortunately, we will have to go through the recruitment process. I think we will. I think our first port of call is our representative organisation in terms of recruitment, which is Local Government New South Wales and their recruitment area. We could seek, or probably will seek quotes from others as to what the cost would be to do this, but we do have to do it properly, and sometimes the cost of doing it properly is insignificant in the long term. So
Milton, when do you make the decision if you're looking for someone for the interim or
I think, my view, Councillor Walker, is if we can find a good candidate, we give them some certainty, give us some certainty, and lock them in to a certain extent. If we can't, then it's a different ballgame. We have to either re-advertise or appoint someone. An interim basis can be a short-term one too. It can be a couple of months, and we could look internally to just have an interim general manager.
Oh, okay.
So I think we'll have to, it'll be a bit of a flexible thing. We can't, I think it'll really depend on what.
Question, Mr Mayor, that last time we went through local government, what was that chap's name?
Yeah, Mark Anderson.
I thought it was quite good actually.
Yeah.
And that's who we're targeting again.
That's the general manager and I organised to meet with Mark Anderson prior to what was going to be the country mayor's meeting on the 7th of August in Sydney. And so we may still pursue that if we can make it a worthwhile trip to Sydney to meet a minister or water minister, roads minister, someone. We may still do that because we just need to get the process underway. That's the thing. In the meantime, we probably should also seek a quote from other sources. I think it'd be a very reasonable thing to do so that we know where we are in terms of our financial obligations in recruitment. But
I want a clarification. From my understanding, they actually put the ads in paper. Colour. Is that correct? Basically,
to a certain extent. We were about last time. This is, I think, there were a significant number of applications last time. We all got I'll stand corrected. We got a quick summary of all the candidates, and then it was narrowed down to 3 to interview. And I think a similar sort of process will occur. I think we were all pretty much in agreement about who we would interview after we just read the paper situation. So I think that the committee of 4 councillors can probably narrow that down. And then I think the really important thing is once you've got your eye on a couple of candidates really having a pretty good interview process and some really some questions that really get to find out about the person and their capabilities, and their expertise, their thoughts about our council moving forward. So I think you've got to be careful not to waste a whole lot of time on people who we're never going to appoint. And I think that's the idea of having a process.
Okay, good.
Any further comments, questions? The general manager and I will keep you very much up to date with this whole process. It might have to be confidential at times, but we know that is of necessity. Because we just need to be right on top of this one to keep it moving. Any further comments, questions before we put that? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 4 of the general manager's report. Items 4 and 5, Councillor Williamson has indicated that he'd like to move those to a workshop situation.
Yeah, correct, Mr Mayor. I'd like to take both of these items, item 4 and item 5 together, take it to a Shire workshop in August and come up with a recommendation to Council, either August meeting or September meeting.
Someone to second that? Councillor Taylor? Anything further? Councillor Williamson?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any further discussion? Have been adopted? That those 2 draft memorandum agreements be taken to a workshop and then brought back to the August council meeting for adoption. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The additional item that's been tabled, item 6 for the General Manager's reports, which pertains to the splash park design, tender for design and construct. The recommendation that we accept the tender on for the amount in the recommendation? Is someone happy to move that recommendation? Councillor Williamson. Second, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Williamson.
Oh, look, as discussed earlier, this is this same company will be doing the 50 metre pool, so I think it's the right option, and what they've come up with is a great looking splash pad. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think the important thing is here is if we adopt the recommendation, we can engage these fellows straight away, get some work underway quickly. It will be potentially, well, it will be done for this summer. So I think that's a significant, mightn't be perfect, but in terms of landscaping, etc., but it will be done. Any further comments, questions before we put that? No? That being the case, item 6 regarding the orange splash pad design and construct. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Sorry. Oh, as a seconder? I think just Brett and Kevin. Yeah, okay.
Can't see that part.
Moving on to the reports of the Division Manager of Finance Administration, the first of those being the reconciliation certificate for June. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Derrick. Second, Councillor Sturdy. Councillor Derrick.
Happy to move the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further comments, questions? Being the case, I put item 1 of the Divisional Manager of Engineering of Finance Administration's report. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Councillor, always just be asking you to always raise your hand, just so because audio is okay, but if we can visually do it as well, confirm that everyone's unanimous or otherwise. Moving on to item 2 of the Divisional Finance Administration report, that being the statement of rates and annual charges. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Walker. Second, Councillor Irving. Councillor Walker.
Happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Just note that it is just, collection figures just down slightly, but we've been noting that as we go along. Thankfully, the season has changed and hopefully people can see an end to some difficult times, but still, it is still a little way away yet, so that for all of our ratepayers. Councillor Irving.
Mr. Mayor, just remind people, I think, of the hardship provisions policy, because that can help people rather than default on their rate payments. They have a strategy then to still pay.
Thank you. Yes. Any further on item 2 of the annual rates and charges certificate? With that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 3. Item 3 of the Division Manager Finance Administration report, that being a donation request from the Warren Museum and Gallery Association. The recommendation there, someone happy to move that recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Taylor, second. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Taylor.
Those early discussions, I don't think we should be going down that track, and leave it to the General Manager and Dr. Burke to liaise and come up with a suitable planning strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any further discussion, comments? Councillor Irving?
If we could just ensure that they understand that our financial position doesn't allow us to help. As we've noted, that it's not in our budget, in our operational plan. So yeah, if they could, that be communicated, that would be great. Thank you.
Anything further before we put that? Put that, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Moving on to, no, item 8. Notice of motion, question with notice, and this is to do with the Independent Planning Commission hearing regarding the Narrabri gas matter. Someone to move the recommendation, and I think it probably falls to you, Councillor Walker. Seconded, Councillor Drews.
Quickly.
Beg your pardon?
We've got to it so quickly,
Oh, what did you?
time-wise. That's all right.
Councillor Walker.
I've been watching the submission that seems to be on at our house in the background since it started, and I've been over at the Wow Centre schoolhouse, and thanks to Darren's set up, you can go and listen and hear it. My main reason for doing this was to probably show support to the many people. There's over 400 people speaking. I don't know how many submissions that this IPC will receive. Really just to support the people. I mean, if I was in their position, being on the land or in town, I would want these questions to be answered, because there's a lot of questions that are not answered in this assessment report, which I did plough through, and I probably missed a lot of things and read some of the expert panels, the water one, the Gazira one, but there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I just think we should lend our support and wait to the many areas that don't seem to have been answered. And
so, Councillor Walker, the way I'm understanding it, our overriding concern is that there is no guarantee that water quality will be preserved, and there is no guarantee that water levels will be maintained. Is that?
well, there's questions on those two particular areas which you can highlight as very important. They had a water expert panel of professors, and they were experts in all sorts of manner concerning water and geology and hydrology, and they did not come up with a decision that was really 100% sure. And you can never do that in science, but a lot of it's on modelling and a lot of it's underground, and I just don't see how, if this is all down underground and lots of metres down underground, how you can come up with a conclusion. And this is just so vitally important to so many people, this body of water. And the precautionary principle has been brought up many times in people that have been speaking. And, if there's any erring, they should err on the side of caution, because if they get this wrong, the repercussions are just disastrous for so many people and industries, and we will feel it too. Not just, it might not be the effect of water, it's just the reverberation will go right across the board.
Sorry, Councillor Drews.
Yeah, I'd like to endorse Councillor words, and I feel that this isn't just about people on the land, it's about towns. And I think especially what we've been through the last couple of years here with the river situation, that the towns may have to rely on bore water, and I think it's going to, it could affect everybody. So
Yeah, more than that, I mean, the precautionary principle also says the intergenerational equality. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm leaving the landscape and the water in a better condition for the next generation or the generations to come. And I mean, I find lots of faults that there is not a lot of, management plans for all aspects of this project. And it seems to be something that's accepted in such an important project and the water is so critical. So, I just think these questions just adds weight and support and hopefully we'll get some answers from the whole process.
Councillor Walker, the General Manager's just written basically a motion that then can be filled out, expanded upon, if in principle Council adopts this particular resolution. So you've listed a whole lot of points there, but we need probably a resolution of Council to proceed. So the General Manager has basically written one here for us, and I just might read it out and see if that covers what I'm trying to get to is the intent of what we're saying, and then you can add some detail to it in your submission. But we need Council to understand the intent of what's being asked for.
I suppose I had to do this as a submission because the next council meeting will be after the date that submissions are about to be put in.
So what I'm suggesting, we need a motion that we make a submission. And what's in that submission, as long as it follows the principle of the motion, should be fine with other councillors. That's what I'm coming to. So the motion that the General Manager's put here in front of us is that the Shire Council write a submission to the Independent Planning Commission, hearing scheduled for the 20th to 24th of July on the Narrabri Gas Project, advising of Council's concerns for damage to underground water resources, groundwater contamination and loss of town and agricultural water.
Any more issues?
Well, that is the overriding issue. Then the detail is in the submission. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I can comment, the reason I wrote it that way, and I appreciate this a lot in Councillor Walker's submission, but we don't have the scientific knowledge to counteract what's being said. We can say we don't like it on whatever basis, but it is a commission hearing and they really want facts. We do have facts that we rely on bore water for town supplies, that our agricultural industry relies on bore water, that if there's any impact in the artesian basin, that's potentially going to impact on our community and our users. We know that if they draw the water down, we know it's going to impact. But to be totally honest, I can't say, will there be methane gas migration? Will there be impacts from that on the water? I can only say very generally. And once upon a time I could probably do that, but in this case I can't, and I don't believe we have the scientific knowledge from us as council to put that submission forward without us being questioned as to our validity in making that submission. So I think we've got to stick to things we know and maybe, broadly talk about the other things in the submission if that's acceptable.
There was the only thing I saw was that chief scientist's recommendation to the upper house, whatever, and only 3 or 4 of those were met. So that's sort of the only concerns, legitimate concern. Like what you say, being sitting there, it's difficult to counter argue.
I thought they were very good recommendations, and they're right. Only 2 or 3 have actually in the report that we didn't find.
Yeah, well, I think that can form part of underneath what we're saying. We know that chief scientists'
And it's
recommendations
come up in a lot of the people.
I think that's factual. whereas it's factual, yeah. So we can incorporate that sort of thing, so we can't.
But the comment would be, Milton, that they've had these people, you know, they're scientists and experts and on these issues of the water and you know, depressurisation. They've had this discussion, this is underground, they can't even get. They've had, you know, Tom was on the committee for the floodplain committee for 10 years. This is water above ground and they can't get that right. And they're still arguing about it. And they're talking about something underground.
Yeah.
They've come to no conclusion, and that is in the report, that they really are erring on this, that they don't know, and they're not finite in their decision, even after all these studies. Yeah. And I mean.
So I think I understand what you're saying.
And well, that's scientific. I mean, that's what you're bringing up is scientific. And,
yeah. So what we're saying is that can all fit in underneath it. Broadly, what we're saying is that we have some grave concerns. Yeah, that's what we're saying, and then how it fills out underneath is yeah. I think if we stick to the things that we can say.
I think Mark's point's very
valid. Yep. So, is someone happy to Councillor Walker?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to support Councillor Walker. I think that sometimes you can say where a council stands. I mean, because going on the fact that there is inadequate information, we haven't been informed adequately to be able to say yes to this project. But the lack of information says to me, and hopefully other councillors, that definitely we say no to the project until we are satisfied with our concerns, and you know, that our concerns have been addressed. What you were saying.
I think that's supporting these other people, the residents and people on the land around in that region, that they're not willing to let this go forward until they're satisfied with the question, you know, answers to the questions that they're asking. Yeah. Your point's probably mightn't sit with everybody, so that's why I tried to do it so that it was more down the line. I'm not here to put words in anyone how they feel, but it's a very personal thing. There are just glaring aspects of the report that stood out, and now I've listened to the people talking, the same questions just keep coming up over and over again.
Yeah. And I think that's, if we note our grave concerns, I think that is the sort of response that we can make. I think that makes
I don't want
sense.
I don't want to have that strong.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's right. Because we're made up of individuals, and we all have our own opinion on this matter.
Yeah, somewhat more stronger than others. Yes.
I was just giving another point of view.
So,
I don't disagree, but it's not my place anyway.
So, Councillor, are you happy to move the manager's motion?
Yes.
As we can put in.
I'll have to follow up on that with some information.
Well, just with some real information that's credible, as opposed to what is perhaps. Anyway, I think you and the general manager can perhaps sort out some appropriate wording along those guidelines. But what we need is council's endorsement to say that, in principle, that's where we're headed.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll read that out again, so that we're all pretty clear about what we're voting on. And that is that the Warren Shire Council writes submission to the Independent Planning Commission, hearing scheduled for the 24th July 2020 on the Narrabri Gas Project, advising of Council's concern for damage to underground water resources, groundwater contamination and loss of town and agricultural water.
I think it actually goes to the 25th now. The speaking goes to the 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was the 24th, and I think because of the volume.
We can change, we can change that.
Yeah.
Yes,
right? Be
That's
quite
right.
close in
That's right, yes. Okay, the Warren Job Council Road submission to the Independent Plan Commission, regarding the Narrabri gas project prior to the closing date, advising of councils, and we just changed it.
The 10th of August is the revised
Isn't
date for submission.
So we just changed that,
Yeah.
just leaving out the actual dates. Everyone happy with that? Right, so moved Councillor Walker, secondly Councillor Drews.
Thank
I think we've probably had a fair discussion. Anyone, any further comments, questions before we put that? And I'll be asking everyone to show their hands on this one, just to be very clear about where we are. Because it's an important issue. Put that then, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Certainty, we got you that time.
I'm hanging in here, mate.
Very good. There are no matters of urgency. I'm asking, sorry, are there any matters of urgency? No. Now we'll move on to the confidential matter. We have a procedure in which we need to follow. Yeah, we can go to that. I just need someone, a mover and a seconder, then council proceed into the committee of the whole. Councillor, moving that, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Drews. Yes. Councillor Lee, and then we need those same people potentially to move that the press and the public be excluded from the committee of the whole. The same, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Drews. And then we need to adopt a recommendation now of that. No, we don't need, there's no recommendation to be adopted. Therefore, we can move towards closing the meeting. Anything further before we do close the meeting? That being the case, declare the meeting closed. Thank you all.